Let's take you live now to Aurora, Ontario, where federal ministers, Premier Doug Ford, and police are making an announcement about funding to tackle the auto theft problem in the province. Let's listen.
And drug trafficking networks. We work every day to keep criminal organizations and their illegal activities out of our neighbourhoods in an effort to reduce gun and gang violence across our province. These groups bring unwanted criminal elements into our communities, resulting in the rash of violent carjackings across the GTA and beyond, the massive increase to auto theft, which we continue to battle every day. In fact, Interpol recently named Canada a new hotspot on the global wave of auto theft. A dubious distinction, and certainly not a place we want to be. Other areas we know that are in need of additional funding supports include intimate partner violence, human trafficking, and child exploitation, to just name a few. Funding will enable additional supports for victims of crime in collaboration with our community partners, as well as providing tools and resources to deploy our frontline officers where and when they are needed most. We are sincerely grateful for the support. I can assure you that York Regional Police and all police services benefiting from this funding will continue to advance innovative solutions to these crime trends. And I'm proud to see the federal and provincial governments working together to ensure all of our communities are safe. And now I'll ask the Honourable Minister LeBlanc to please come to the podium to deliver his remarks. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chief. Premier Ford, Solicitor General Kersner, my colleague Leah Taylor-Roy, and my colleague, the Attorney General of Canada, Minister of Justice, Arif Virani. We're very happy to be here with you, and Chief McSween, thank you to you and thank you to your colleagues here at the York Regional Police Force for welcoming us at your headquarters, but more importantly for the remarkable work that you do and the women and men who serve with you do to keep the York region safe and to make a contribution vitally important to public safety across our country. And for that, we thank you very much. As I mentioned, I'm very happy to be here, obviously, with our colleagues from the Ontario government, with Premier Ford, of course, but with my colleagues in the House of Commons, Leah Taylor-Roy, in whose constituency we are today, but my colleagues Francesco Cerbera and Tony Van Byen. Thank you very much for the work you do on this important issue and for the country as well. Over the last number of months, I have had many conversations with our partners in the Government of Ontario, with my colleagues in the Ontario caucus, about public safety issues that the Chief referenced a moment ago, and particularly about the increasingly alarming issues around auto theft. Premier Ford and I speak often about these issues and how the Ontario government and the Government of Canada can collaborate as effectively as possible in tackling crime issues that are understandably of great concern to the people of Ontario, and also support the women and men who work in our law enforcement in doing the difficult and dangerous work that people depend on. And Premier, it's a privilege for me to be with you today. It's the first time I've had an opportunity to participate in a formal announcement with you, Premier Ford, and I'm very privileged to be here, but I'm also privileged to say that the Government of Canada is extremely fortunate to have a partner in the Government of Ontario that wants to work in a constructive and collaborative way on issues so important to people in this province. Here in the York region and in many big cities across the country, auto theft is a growing problem and one that's increasingly violent as well. Le vol de véhicules a des répercussions sur les familles canadiennes,
has repercussions on Canadian families, and is increasingly becoming a source of revenue for organized crime, which is selling these stolen cars and using the profits to fund other criminal activities. We all agree on the need to act and the need to take action in partnership. That starts right here in our communities by supporting the extraordinary work being done by police officers and their efforts in prevention as well. The gangs and criminal groups that are committing these crimes often recruit among young people, and I spoke about this with Premier Ford yesterday. We have a duty to ensure that we are offering them from the very beginning a different and more promising path in life. At the same time, we need to support the capacities of our law enforcement organizations and their capacities to fight crime. That is exactly what we are doing this morning.
I'm very happy to announce that the Government of Canada will invest $121 million towards crime prevention and enforcement efforts in cities right across Canada, including right here in the York region. This investment will support efforts to address, obviously, as the Chief noted, gun and gang violence, but it will also support efforts from police officers across the province to deal with the criminal linkages, the organized crime linkages to an increasingly violent and alarming circumstance around auto theft. Building on that work, all of us, the Government of Ontario, the Government of Canada, our municipal partners, have been in regular discussions on ways that we can work together in a more enhanced and effective way. I talked with the Solicitor General about this again this morning. The Premier and I have spoken about it as well. Our government is convening, as you know, a national summit on combating auto theft next week in Ottawa. The Government of Ontario is an extraordinary partner in this work, and it will be an effort for us to further coordinate joint activities, build on joint initiatives that are already underway, but identify, more importantly, other solutions, better solutions where we can work together with industry, with the insurance industry, and obviously with law enforcement personnel across the province of Ontario, around the country. And I'm happy to tell you that the RCMP and Canada Border Services agencies are prepared to increase their collaboration and their investments with partners in the province of Ontario and the province of Quebec to ensure that we're doing everything we can collectively to do this work. So Arif and I and our colleagues are looking forward, Premier, to have representatives of your government and other partners in Ottawa next week. And I think that this is a way that we can double down together on efforts to deal with an alarming and worrisome circumstance that many people talk to all of us about, and they deserve to know their governments are doing everything they can collaboratively together to deal with this problem. And I thank you very much for being here this morning.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Minister LeBlanc, for that introduction and for our discussions over the last little while. I can tell you I'm so thrilled to be back here in Aurora alongside Minister Kersner, Minister Downey, Deputy Minister Mario Di Tommaso, and our amazing team from York Region, Ministers Mulrooney and Lecce, and MPPs Don Gallagher-Murphy, Billy Pang, Laura Smith, and Daisy Way. Looks like we have everyone here. And just before I begin, I want to thank Chief McSwain. Thank you for your leadership here. I want to thank all the frontline officers here today and everyone at York Regional Police for hosting us. I also want to recognize Minister Varani, MP Leah Taylor-Roy, MP Francesco Sabara, and MP Tony Van Byn. York Regional Chair Wayne Emerson and Mayor Maracas, thank you for being a great mayor and always supporting our police, and of course, our great OPP Commissioner Tom Creek and Mark Baxter from the Police Association of Ontario. Thank you all for joining us today for this important announcement. And friends, it takes all of us working together, our police forces, our frontline officers, our court system, our JPs and judges, community groups, and all levels of government to keep our people and community safe. We each have a role to play. For our part, our government is making the necessary investments to ensure that our police services have the tools and the resources they need. We're getting more boots on the ground across the province. We're expanding the number of recruits that can be trained every year at the Ontario Police College. We added 140 new spots in 2023, and we'll add an additional 420 spots by the end of this year. Another priority of ours is bail reform, and I want to thank the federal government for introducing Bill C-48, which toughens bail conditions for violent repeat offenders. To help do our part, last year our government announced $112 million in funding to strengthen the province's bail system. So high-risk offenders remain in jail, and anyone out on bail follows the rules. We're tackling auto theft head-on with $51 million over 3 years to help police identify and dismantle criminal networks behind auto theft rings, because people shouldn't have to live in fear of their cars getting stolen in the middle of the night or doors being kicked in at their residence, and sometimes at gunpoint. And friends, today's announcement, this landmark deal between Canada and Ontario, is going to enhance our efforts to help tackle gun crime and gang violence in our communities. The $121 million investment over 5 years is going to provide more resources for our police forces. It's going to help disrupt the drug supply chains, stop illegal guns from entering our province, curb the level of auto thefts and carjackings, and put more criminals and thugs behind bars where they belong. Friends, we're doing everything we can to support our police services, from making investments in new technologies and innovative policing initiatives, fighting guns and gangs, to bringing in new recruits. We'll do whatever it takes to keep our people and our community safe. Thank you again to Minister LeBlanc and Minister Varani for your support. Thank you to our policing partners here today, and we look forward to continuing working with all of you to tackle guns, gangs, and auto thefts, including at next week's summit. Thank you, everyone, and may God bless the men and women in uniform, and may God bless the people of Ontario. Thank you. Now I'll pass it over to Minister Varani.
I want to say thank you very much, Premier Ford. I'll just open with quelques petits mots en français comme une ministre au niveau fédéral.
I'll just open with a few words in French as a federal minister. I'd like to salute the men and the women who are constantly working for safety in our communities.
The men and women in uniform who are all around us, who deserve, first and foremost, all of our gratitude for putting themselves in harm's way to keep all of us safe. It's really, really important here in York Region and throughout the province and throughout the country, and I applaud you for the work you do, and I'm grateful for it. I want to acknowledge again the people that are gathered here. As I was listening to the Premier speak about this issue, he talked about this collaboration that's necessary, and he mentioned something, a specific item that we worked on very diligently over the past 18 months, and we got across the finish line, and that was bail reform. And what struck me about bail reform is that you saw unanimity. You saw law enforcement, you saw elected leaders, and we've got everyone from city levels all the way up to the national level here gathered all around us, including many of my colleagues from the federal parliament, Francesco, Tony, and Leah, as well as Dominic. And what we found with that bail reform package is that we all rowed in the same direction with unanimity to get something across the finish line. There's no reason why addressing auto theft can't be a sort of a bail reform 2.0. Sort of a repeat of that very successful model. Because what I'm hearing about is this from many, many sectors. When Dominic and I were with Solicitor General Kersner and my good friend Doug Downey at a federal provincial territorial conference, this wasn't just being raised by the Ontario representatives. This was being raised by the Quebec representatives. I'm hearing about this in BC. I'm hearing about this at the Port of Halifax. This is truly a national issue. It requires a national response, and that's why I think it's so critical that we're moving ahead with that important summit. The dollars that are being invested are critical, because I think with the dollars that Dominic mentioned, $121 million, really goes to assisting our stable and confident partners that we have in the Government of Ontario in addressing this pernicious issue. And I wanted to take a moment to just say that everything I've learned about this issue has been informed by the officers themselves. So I had representatives of the York Police, I had the Durham Police, the Peel Police, and the TPS all in a meeting in December, and they talked to me about what needs to be done, but the multi-sectoral features of this issue, as was outlined by Minister LeBlanc, but they also talked about the need for addressing this in a manner that looks at it on a zoom out. And what they said to me is that it's all of these different sectors. It's about the responsibility of the auto industry. It's about insurance pieces. It's about looking at the ports. It's about looking at the CBSA. It's about, yes, looking at the criminal code, for which I'm responsible, and I'm very open to looking at the criminal code. They also emphasized to me this aspect of organized criminal behavior and large institutions, national and international in scope, that are actually behind a lot of this theft. And it's really key to understand that when we're looking at this, we do look at it comprehensively. And I want to make sure that Canadians know that right now, as we speak, we've got provisions that deal with money laundering that are on the floor of the House of Commons. That's a bill called C-59. And I would love to see the same type of cooperation we had on bail reform applied to that bill, so we can get those anti-money laundering provisions across the finish line. And I want to end in saying that I'm not just the Minister of Justice and Attorney General who's dedicated to the safety of the communities around this country. I'm also a Toronto MP. And I hear about this very directly from my own constituents here in this part of the country. And what they say to me is that they're scared. They're scared because what once looked like the taking of a fob electronically through a scanning device has now turned into, we're coming into your home to find those keys, we're kicking down your door, as Premier Ford described, and sometimes we're using weapons to obtain that device. That's terrifying for people. It's terrifying for people that may have come to this country escaping trauma or persecution from another part of the world to face that kind of fear in their own homes and the safety of the place where they should feel safest. That's something that we've got to be dedicated towards addressing. That's what I do as the Minister of Justice. That's what I'm dedicated to do. That's what Doug Downey and I talk about all the time. That's what Solicitor General Kersner, Dominic LeBlanc are dedicated to do, is keeping our communities safe. We can't have people affected in terms of trauma, in terms of their mental health, or even their affordability in terms of their insurance rates going up. So that's why we're rowing in that same direction. That's why that summit's going to be important. That's why I'm very keen to see so many people here from different levels of government, because this is an issue that is nonpartisan, that we need to work with pace, with efficiency, because we need to get the job done. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Passing it over to my friend Michael Kersner.
Good morning. Bonjour à tous. It's an honor for me to be here today to echo this important message. And I'd like to start by saying thank you to York Regional Police Chief Jim McSween for hosting us and your unwavering dedication to keeping Ontario safe. Our government knows the effects that gun and gang activity and violent crime have on communities across the province. These acts of criminality are totally unacceptable. In Ontario, our government, led by Premier Ford, knows that people have the inherent right to live safely in their communities, to wake up their kids and loved ones each morning and see them off on their day, and to go to work and to shop and to pray safely, which is why public safety will always be a top priority. The gun, gangs, and violence reduction strategy represents a strategic investment of $121 million that will support targeted funding to help keep Ontario safe. This is a welcome investment in Ontario, as we all know that under the leadership of Premier Ford, our government made a strong commitment to dismantle organized crime, get illegal guns and drugs off our streets, and fight back against the rise of auto theft. We have put criminals on notice, and we will continue putting them out of business. Since the inception of the guns, gangs, and violence reduction strategy, we've made investments to help accomplish our goals here in Ontario. Through year one, we were able to support $2.8 million Ontario CCTV grant, which provided funding to 25 policing projects to help protect their communities, as well as a $4 million victim support grant, which will fund 45 police services and OPP detachments in developing projects that support victims and survivors of intimate partner violence, domestic violence, human trafficking, and child exploitation. These successful efforts can be seen right here in York Region at YRP, as they received $200,000 to purchase CCTV cameras. YRP has also received $5 million through the Gun and Gang Specialized Investigation Funding, and a further $1.4 million through the Greater Golden Horseshoe Investigation Fund. These projects support partnerships that establish and enhance intelligence and investigation that target the drivers of gang expansion. And because of our government's sincere dedication to public safety, efforts such as the Provincial Carjacking Joint Task Force has been able to make 89 arrests, lay 554 charges, and recover over 100 vehicles, and we're only getting started. We have seen successes. There is going to be more that we will do, which is why the funding here today and the announcement here today is very much appreciated. And I'd like to reiterate that we are grateful for this support from the federal government and will continue to allocate this funding into programs that help achieve our primary goal of keeping the people of Ontario safe. Our commitment to public safety is absolute and constant because a safe Ontario is a strong Ontario. Le soutien de notre gouvernement est absolu et sans relâche.
Our government support is absolute and unrelenting.
Dit Ontario fort.
This it will help make Ontario strong.
Our strategy is working because we believe in Ontario and we believe in Canada. Parce que nous croyons en notre province et en notre
pays. We believe in our province and in our country. At this time,
I'd like to call the Member of Parliament for Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill, Leah Taylor-Roy, to come to the podium. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Miigwech.
Thank you so much for the introduction and for your words. And I'd like to ask my colleagues, Tony Van Bynen and Francesco Sabera, to join me up here because we really work as a team in York Region. Come on. And I just want to point out that, you know, there are so many members of parliament, members of provincial parliament, mayors, regional representatives here today, which really underscores how important this issue is.
All right, we are watching a big announcement this morning from the federal government investing $121 million towards crime prevention for cities across this country. They're focusing today on auto theft as well as a number of other crime-related issues in Aurora, Ontario. So we are going to continue to monitor this. We'll go back once they start taking questions and we'll get more details on how that money is going to be spent.